Hi guys, how are you all doing? I'm going to be talking about whiskey today and I will be speaking in English for a change because I think this list has a lot to offer to not just our Indian contingent but to everybody in specific. Now, the one thing is for certain, single malts are quite expensive and they do cost a lot of money. You end up paying at least $100 for many single malts or $50 for many single malts. But what are the best 25 or 20? This is Glenmorangie Tayne. This is a very good whiskey which does have a sherry note but is ultimately quite tasty and it hits the spot. I highly recommend this. This is a 43% ABV. I will not be mentioning the ABV on all whiskies, but in this case, since I have the bottle, I'm mentioning it. And so this is a whiskey which is worth trying. This surprise, surprise. The second whiskey that I highly recommend is Glenlivet 12. I like Glenlivet 12 because of its character. Yes, the taste has changed a bit over the years, or maybe it's psychological, because what happens is that we're always looking at a whiskey, but we're not paying attention to the thing inside. So if I change the sticker and I make you have it, maybe psychologically you might feel that the older Glenlivet 12 tasted better than the new Glenlivet 12. But all in all, I feel Glenlivet 12 is a perfectly composed, well-composed single malt and is great for beginners, for intermediates, and even for advanced whiskey snobs. If I'm talking about Glenlivet and I'm not talking about Glenlivet 15, then I'm doing gross injustice. The thing about Glenlivet 15 is that it hits many points and is very delicious, whether you add water to it or whether you have it neat, whether you have it on the rocks. Glenlivet 15 will hit the point in every single case. One thing I want to say about Glenlivet 15, if you are going to be drinking it, please drink cautiously because you will end up finishing the bottle. I'm not joking. Glenlivet 15 is the kind of whiskey you will finish. It's like a monkey shoulder. Every time you're having it, be careful, be wary. You will end up finishing the bottle. So go slow on the Glenlivet. Number 4 is Glenlivet, which comes in a Caribbean rum cask. So this is again something which Glenlivet tried and I tried it, and again I found it very tasty, very delightful. I think the use of Caribbean casks adds a nice pleasant sweetness, and I like my whiskey sweet. Number 5 would be Ardbeg 5. What do I say about Ardbeg 5? Ardbeg 5 is slowly replacing Ardbeg 10 as the standard best-selling whiskey from the house of Ardbeg. If you don't know this, Ardbeg distillery usually makes very smoky whiskies. Ardbeg 5 is also called wee beastie, which means a little beastie, I think. And it's quite pungent, it's quite aromatic, it's quite out there. It's like a whiskey to be had on a cold day. It's like a whiskey which you need to have on the rocks with some water. Completely hits the spot. Probably in my all-time top 10 whiskies right now. So Ardbeg 5 I highly recommend at now. I can't talk about Ardbeg and not mention the Ardbeg 10. It's even more classic. It's not as decided as the Ardbeg 5 is, but I really like Ardbeg 10 and I can't wait to taste it again because it's so beautiful. It always leaves you with something. It leaves you with this feeling of contentment, and when you don't have it for a while, it's the kind of whiskey you're gonna miss. So Ardbeg 10 I highly recommend. How much do these whiskeys cost? I think all of these whiskeys are under $100 or under 7,000 rupees. I think some of you might be surprised, but my number 7 single malt is Macallan Gold. I quite like it. It's very fruity, it's very bountiful, it's sweet, it has a great smell, it has a great aftertaste. It is a very friendly whiskey, which is kind of expensive. I think it costs about 10,000 to 12,000 rupees if I'm not wrong. Macallan Gold is the only Macallan I've ever owned and I loved it. Now the next whiskey I'm going to speak about, I have done a video for this. I've never owned the bottle. It costs maybe $500 or about 50,000 rupees. If you're finding this somewhere in 20,000 rupees, buy it. If you can find this somewhere in $300, buy it. Send me a bottle, I'll pay you. It's that good. This is Laphroaig 25, possibly the best whiskey I've ever had, but never owned. I had the pleasure of trying this with a very big whiskey enthusiast. I've also made a video for it. If you look up my channel, you can find the review for Laphroaig 25. What is so amazing about it? That taste, that elegance, that earthy elegance of Laphroaig 25. I mean, I've never had something like Laphroaig 25 in my entire life. It is truly magical. Now, a lot of people like this, a lot of people don't like it, but my next whiskey recommendation is going to be Balvenie 12. This whiskey is not at all water friendly. This whiskey has a bit of a weird taste, which it leaves you with. But all in all, after a lot of thinking and after a lot of time passing, I've realized Balvenie 12 deserves to be in this list despite being a bit of a love or hate whiskey. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't like it. Right now, it's in my good books. And number 10 is a whiskey which is not available anymore. You're going to find a lot of difficulty in finding this, and this is a very caramel pleasing whiskey. This is Glenrothes. My cousin brother gifted it to me and I thank him for a very unique looking bottle. I'll try to put a photograph here, and that is number 10, Glenrothes. Number 11 is another Islay whiskey or Islay whiskey, and it's called Caol Ila. Some people say this comes from the house, or it's the cousin whiskey to Johnnie Walker. Johnnie Walker doesn't make any single malts, but Caol Ila is probably the representation of what Johnnie Walker expression would have been like. Now, I know there's some kind of conglomeration because Green Label, 1/4 of Green Label, which is a blended malt, is Caol Ila. Caol Ila is distinctly beautiful, oily, very leathery, very good tasting. In fact, the leather is not so much there. The peat is also kind of muted, but it hits the spot on every agenda. The peat is there, but it's very pleasant peat. It's not one of those annoying ass peats. But I like friendly whiskies, which don't try to change the map of the world. And Balvenie 15 is beautiful, delectable, sweet, understated, a bit like a Chivas Regal, but it's pretty good. You gotta try Balvenie 15 if you're a fan of Chivas Regal. Good single malt. And I think it costs about, 6,000 rupees. Oh my word, this is the chef's kiss, Glenfiddich 15. What do I say about Glenfiddich 15? Time out, man. What do I say about the Glenfiddich 15? This is such a nice, pleasant evening whiskey. Whether you are at home, whether you're outside, it's very expensive. I think it costs about 6,000 rupees, but it truly, truly represents single malt whiskeys very well. If I had to choose one whiskey as the most easygoing, hey man, pour me this whiskey, it would be Glenfiddich 15. It's like the black label equivalent to this list. So I highly recommend Glenfiddich 15. For those of you who are wondering why I didn't mention Glenfiddich 12, I don't like it, dude. The next whiskey I'm going to mention is probably a whiskey which I often say is my favorite whiskey of all time, and that is the original Glenfiddich 18. I am not talking about the VAT 1, the VAT 4, none of that nonsense, just the Glenfiddich 18. It deserves the silence. 10 second silence for Glenfiddich 18 starting now. So it's everything I could have said in that space. It's that damn good. Who should have a Glenfiddich 18? People who are getting into whiskies, people who are getting into single malts. Glenfiddich 18 will not disappoint you. Glenfiddich 15 might disappoint you the first 2 times you have it, but Glenfiddich 18 will hit the spot. This next whiskey, it costs 30,000 rupees in Delhi. And if you go to a duty free, it costs about 300 CHF, Swiss francs. So about 30,000 rupees on. And if you go to some really special duty free, it probably will cost you 22 to 24,000 rupees. This is Glenfiddich 21. Lovely whiskey, nothing bad to say about it. It is even better than Glenfiddich 21. The only negative of a Glenfiddich 21 that I can cite is its price. Is it worth the price tag? Probably not. But you also live just once, so you might as well try the Glenfiddich 21. Will I ever spend 20,000 rupees on buying it? Yeah, if my income was 6 times what it is, I would definitely buy the Glenfiddich 21. But right now, I'm good with my Teacher's Highland Yow. Number 16, surprise, surprise, is an Indian whiskey which I really like, and it's called Amrut Fusion. Why is it called Amrut Fusion? Apparently, they take some Himalayan malts and they take some malts from Scotland, and they merged it together. All in all, it's slightly peaty, it's slightly sweet, It feels like you're having a gold label which is bonded very well and gelled really well. It's like a gold label with character. And Amrut Fusion is quite a weird whiskey because sometimes in some spots you find it at 42% alcohol, at some places you find it for 46% alcohol. If you're living abroad, if you're living outside of India, I'm pretty sure you can find the 46% variant. Just try it, man. It's not very expensive, it's pretty good, hits the spot. I prefer this over Talisker Storm and Talisker and all of that shiza. Yeah, man. Number 17 is again an Indian whiskey. It's called Longitude 77, and it's from the house of Seagrams. As far as I know, they have made this for India, and it's quite good. It's a very good entry level whiskey which costs about 3,500 rupees. I highly recommend it, and it's pretty good. That's all I'm gonna say. Number 18 is Mcdowells number 1. This is a 4,000 rupee single malt from the house of Mcdowells, which makes the Mcdowells number 1 blended whiskey, which is a very inexpensive cheapie of a whiskey, which people love in India. And they've made this non-chill filtered, beautiful 45% odd. Is it 45? It's 46% ABV, which is pretty strong for us Indians, if you know what I mean. And this is called Mcdowell's Indian Single Malt Distiller's Batch. This has only 6,000 bottles, and I'm one of the 6,000 lucky people who has this. So yeah, do try this. You can't go wrong with this. What does it taste like? Definitely has some sherry elements, but overall I think I find it to be quite okay. It says ex-bourbon, virgin oak, and Cabernet Sauvignon wine cask unique to the region, smooth vanilla grounded by with spicy notes, citric freshness, the velvety rich whiskey, the liquid Now I can relax because now we have mentioned the whiskies which needed some explanation. The next segment of whiskies you've already probably tried. Laphroaig 10 is my number 19. I love, if you ask me what is your favorite type of whiskey, I love smoky whiskeys even more than I like my sweet whiskeys. So Laphroaig 10 is the bap, is the father of all other Laphroaigs. Of course, I mentioned Laphroaig 25 is my favorite whiskey, but Laphroaig 10 hits the spot, dude. It's medicinal, it's herbal, it's beautiful to taste, it's elegant, it's debonair. I don't know if that's the correct word, but it is debonair. You gotta play along with me, dude. That's number 19, Laphroaig 10. You can't go wrong. Best entry-level smoky whiskey. Number 20 would be Glengrant 10. It's okay. It's not bad. It's cheap. It doesn't hurt the wallet too much. It's good. You get it for around 3 grand, 3,500 Indian rupees. It's perfectly fine. It's elegant, well-balanced, good-looking bottle. Hits the spot. Number 21 would be the normal Glenmorangie. I've often said Glenmorangie is the one single malt, best single malt. Glenmorangie 10, the basic Glenmorangie. This was the Glenmorangie Tayne. The Glenmorangie is the perfect single malt whiskey. Along with Glenfiddich 18, Glenmorangie is my favorite. Highly recommend Glenmorangie. It costs nothing. At 3,500 rupees, this is free from Gurgaon. Even if you get this for 5,000 rupees, buy it. Even if you get it for $80, buy it. Glenmorangie, you can't go wrong. It's sweet. It has a lot of honey, caramel. It's very well made, very well matured. It's 10 years of age. You can't go wrong. Best entry level, mid level, high level. Glenmorangie is beautiful. You really start to feel the Glenmorangie on your 4th and 5th drink. And around the 10th drink, when you're completely inebriated, you start following God. And you believe in His charity and mercy. Yes, you do. Recently, I was having Black Label at a party, and there was a bottle staring at me. And the bottle was Paul John Brilliance. And I just went and had a sip. In fact, I made a nice, pot of alcohol for me. I put some ice, I put some whiskey, about 60, 70 ml. I put some water. I let it sit for a minute or 5. And then I had Paul John Brilliance. And there is something brilliant about Paul John Brilliance. I don't own the bottle. I've never owned it. But totally worth buying, 46.4%. Even if this costs 10,000 bucks, spend it. Oops. 23 is Talisker 10. What do I say about Talisker 10? Talisker is a peaty, smoky whiskey which has a lot of guts in it, very manly. If you're a cigar smoking cowboy, you probably will like Talisker. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite. I don't care much about Talisker, you know. And the reason for that is because I haven't tried much of it. It's like another whiskey, Singleton. I don't care much about Singleton. It's very honey and it's not for me. So Talisker 10 is my number 23 whiskey worth trying. You can try it out. Number 24, I have to give it to Suntory Hibiki. Beautiful whiskey. I think it's a single malt. If it's not a single malt, this will be a real shit show. So let me just check this. Okay, I think it's a single malt Hibiki. It's definitely priced like a single malt. Okay, so no Hibiki then. I'm sorry. There's no Hibiki. Hibiki has to be removed from the list. Number 24. I was gonna put number 24 as Hibiki, but I just realized it is not a single malt. It's some kind of master select blend bullshit. My next whiskey, number 24, would have to be kilchoman. Yes, weird smelling, spelling, and has a beautiful taste. Negative of this is you can't mix it with water. You only have to have it straight up or on the rocks. You cannot mix it with water. But kilchoman is definitely worth trying if you haven't. The number 25 is so good that we're going to go for a walk. I was at a party and they were serving this whiskey and I had it. And I said to the person who was the host, I said, "It's pretty good." He said, "Yeah." Then I went to the guy and I said, "This is pretty good. How the hell do you have this bottle?" He's like, "My cousin got it." Because this guy doesn't drink whiskey. People who don't drink whiskey are really stupid, by the way. So I went to his cousin and I complimented him on the whiskey. And he said, "Yeah, man. Yeah, man." And he's like a real whiskey snob. Okay, he's a good guy, but I can see that he's a bit of an interested whiskey snob. So he's not a bad guy overall. This whiskey is called Ardbeg Uigedail. I have never, in my beautiful 40 bountiful years, tasted something so exquisite, so magnifique, so brilliant, so artful, so gamey, so beautiful, so precise, so elegant, so oily, so musky, so fruitful. Fucking wins the show, dog, as the 25th best whiskey, 25th best single malt. That was my list of 25 single malts you should try. If you think I have missed out on something, I would love to fight you in the comment section. So yeah, thank you for watching. Do hit the subscribe button. Help me grow. We are just 970,000 away from 1,000,000. So help me get there fast. Thank you. And I'll see you guys when I do. Boom shakalaka.